Alright, so I'm going to try to get through this video without pausing it too many times. You thought my voice was nasally before. Hey, take a look at it now. My sinuses are really clogged up and I can't really talk. But either way, we have ourselves a video to make, and today we're talking about a newly acquired Vegas Golden Knights player whom I personally really want to see succeed. We're taking our sights over to the 2017 NHL Entry Draft, the very first NHL draft to include the Vegas Golden Knights, and the draft where they had 3 first-round picks. All of them were indeed used by the Vegas Golden Knights, but all of those players are no longer on the team. Let's go backwards all the way to the front when talking about these Vegas Golden Knights first-round picks. Erik Brannstrom traded away in the Mark Stone trade to the Ottawa Senators. He's pretty good right now. Who really knows if he's going to get traded again, though? That's kind of a debate that's up in the air. Nick Suzuki, we all kind of know about him. Montreal trade, Max Pacioretty. Nobody shuts up about Nick Suzuki and that Vegas Golden Knights trade, so he's the second guy in the first round. And the first guy in the first round that the Golden Knights took in 2017 happened to be Cody Glass. Now, Cody Glass was a guy that I personally liked a lot in this time frame. I was actually really open to the idea of the Vancouver Canucks taking him at 5th overall. Alas, that did not happen. They took PD instead. But Cody Glass for the longest time was seen as this potential two-way guy, a number 1, maybe number 2 center, who could be used in all situations and might be able to put up 65 to 70 points a year in his prime. He was seen as this guy that could just do everything right, and that's why the Vegas Golden Knights took him at 6th overall. However, you give it a few years, you see the development happening in Vegas. He was getting injured here and there, he wasn't really progressing in the way that they wanted him to, and he never really fully broke out into the NHL full-time. Which is why, earlier in this offseason, you saw Cody Glass actually get traded over to the Nashville Predators in exchange for Nolan Patrick, the 2nd overall pick in that 2017 NHL Entry Draft, who was recently acquired by the Predators in a trade with Ryan Ellis from the Philadelphia Flyers. Nolan Patrick is our subject here today. I'm sorry, it took us 2 minutes to get into the topic here, but I wanted to get some exposition on the situation firstly. Nolan Patrick is who we're discussing about today because I wanted to bring up the entire idea of him potentially reviving his career. The Flyers selected him 2nd overall in the 2017 NHL Entry Draft, and this was pretty significant because the Flyers were one of the best teams actually in the draft lottery that year. They had themselves an 84% chance of picking 13th overall. Instead, they jumped all the way up to 2nd. They took Nolan Patrick, whom a lot of people were projecting as a 1st overall pick for a good chunk leading up into the draft year, but who just didn't play all too much in his draft season. He was injured for a good chunk of the year, which allowed Nico Hischier to overtake that 1st overall spot and get selected by the New Jersey Devils instead. For Nolan Patrick, though, he made the NHL right away, and he had 30 points. Pretty good. 73 games played right there, 13 goals. Definitely not a top-of-the-line, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews kind of guy, but he was there. He was doing his thing. He was 19 years old because he was actually one of the oldest players in the entire NHL draft that year, but he was still seen as this highly progressive two-way centerman who could just really be a top-line guy if he panned out in the way that we wanted him to. His next season didn't really see any progression points-wise, but he was still getting those years of experience, and that was seen as a valuable thing for Philadelphia Flyers fans. And then 2019-20 rolled around, and Nolan Patrick ended up missing the entire season with a concussion. That was bad. Really, really bad thing going on for the development of an early 20s young NHL star to be. And a lot of people were looking at this season and saying, man, he has been really hit with some bad luck over the years. From getting injured in his draft season to getting concussed for all of 2019-20, Nolan Patrick is just the epitome of unlucky NHL prospect development over here. What made things even worse, though, is what happened after he came back. He had himself a 52-game year in 2020-2021, but he only had 9 points. You saw the development really take a pause with the Flyers. He was no longer developing, as you would say, and in fact, he had stagnated so much that you had reports coming out that he actually wanted out of Philadelphia for a change of scenery, firstly, and secondly, to negate the expectations that people had onto this guy. You gotta remember, he was a 2nd overall pick. He was supposed to be that Patrick Laine, that Andrei Svechnikov, that Kaapo Kakko. Okay, that's a bad example. Kaapo Kakko hasn't really been all too great in the NHL either yet, but Nolan Patrick was in that territory. So he gets traded over to the Vegas Golden Knights, and now all of a sudden you're in a weird position here, because the Vegas Golden Knights have themselves a 1-2 center punch of Chandler Stevenson and William Karlsson. They don't really have that number 1 definitive center that, let's say, 2/3 of the NHL's teams have. And so now, you have Nolan Patrick coming in here in place for Cody Glass, a guy who has played full NHL seasons and who will probably be slotted into that third-line spot behind Chandler Stephenson and William Karlsson. This is an article in the Las Vegas Sun right here. Patrick says, "It obviously wasn't the year I wanted to have in Philly last year. I think a fresh start was the best thing for me. Coming to an organization like Vegas is obviously extremely exciting. For my off-season training, I'm extremely motivated after the season I had. I'm looking for a bounce-back year. I've been doing everything I can to get myself ready for the first game." You also have yourselves in the Vegas Golden Knights system a young up-and-coming center by the name of Peyton Krebs, who you may recognize as well. He was a top pick in the 2018 NHL Entry Draft, and a guy who also has first-line potential in my opinion. This article makes a very good point that if you have yourselves an injury happening to William Karlsson or Stephenson, one of Patrick or Krebs would need to step up. In fact, for Nolan Patrick, I think the bar is pretty low if you want to talk about a step up. You take a look at what he did last season. He had a team-worst 24% on-ice goals percentage at even strength, and according to Evolving Hockey, he was worth a -2 goals above replacement and was the second worst forward in the National Hockey League at 5v5. So the bar is pretty low for him to actually bounce back and improve upon what he did last season. He wants to do that, and according to this article over here, there are some pretty good stats that indicate that he actually might be able to bounce back, like the fact that his positive expected goals rate was at 50.4%. Not to mention the fact that his shooting percentage was at 4.7% too. If Patrick wants to go out there and improve on what he had last season, it shouldn't take all too much. This is what Brett Howden says, a recently acquired Vegas Golden Knights player, and a guy who used to play against Patrick in the WHL. I've seen a lot of him, and a lot of goals and a lot of plays when I'm on the side, so it's going to be nice to have him on our side. He's a really special, dynamic player. For Vegas to get him as well, it's obviously huge for the team. The article here on the Las Vegas Sun then goes over how the Golden Knights have an exemplary history of turning players other teams didn't want into roster mainstays. Look no further than the two players ahead of Patrick on the depth chart for proof of that, talking about Stephenson and William Karlsson. They'll get another test this season, and a player Philadelphia lost patience with, and a player who Vegas may need to look at as an important member of its roster in the middle of the ice. And so for Nolan Patrick heading into 2021-2022, it is quite daunting just to acknowledge how poor his season last year was. But he is still only 22 years old, he still does have an NHL future ahead of him, he's still good enough to play, and so maybe a fresh start here in Vegas of all places, the team in the National Hockey League that is the best at turning dirt into diamonds over here, could be that fit. Furthermore, I really do like the dynamic they have with Peyton Krebs and the potential, let's just say, competitive rivalry they could have for that third-line center spot. Patrick and Krebs both have extraordinarily high ceilings, in my opinion, and Peyton Krebs has also been kind of slowed down by injuries throughout his career, too. So these guys coming right in here, vying for the same spot, not just on the Vegas Golden Knights short-term on the third-line center spot, but potentially long-term, too. It could make for some good competitive prospect development, I guess you could say, between both of these guys, because, hey, if I'm Peyton Krebs and I'm getting one-upped by Nolan Patrick in practice, I want to improve my game. I want to get that third-line center spot, and it's going to motivate me to be even better as well. So it's kind of a what goes around comes around kind of thing. And so, long-term, if Nolan Patrick can really max out what he could be, if he could be that maybe like 80-point guy plus in the NHL, that two-way center who's just an absolute monster everywhere on the ice, then this could be seen as a really big win, especially if you consider Cody Glass and how he has developed so far in the Vegas system too. Now, for Cody Glass, obviously there's a little bit of a different aspect to that too, because he's now with Nashville, they're going to be developing him differently, and we'll see if Cody Glass could really benefit from that change of scenery as well. But either way, just taking a look at this on paper, you take a look at Cody Glass 1-for-1 for Nolan Patrick, which was the second part of the Ryan Ellis trade with the Flyers and the Predators earlier on. This is seen as a win. Like, if you told me back in 2017, one day the Golden Knights would trade Cody Glass 6th overall for Nolan Patrick 2nd overall, I'd be like, whoa, what a great trade right there for the Vegas Golden Knights. It's just, what happens after the trade is what's going to determine whether or not the trade is a win or a loss. So I made it to the end of this video over here. I had to pause it 60 times, 59 individual cuts right here to get through this commentary because my sinuses are acting up. Talk to me in the comments. What do you think about Nolan Patrick and the way that he has developed? Do you think he can bounce back in the Vegas Golden Knights system like we have indicated he might be able to in this video? A link is in the description to the Las Vegas Sun article. I hope you enjoyed this British Trolls 99. And bye.